Good morrow to you, my friend, and welcome to Ragnarok Survival, the SitRep for today, the 15th of March 2023. This is where I go through news reports that I've seen in the past day or so and pull it apart from the perspective of being prepared, emergency and disaster preparedness. That's what it's all about. What most people would call prepping. Doomsday prepping. No, if you've ever listened to the channel before, you know that's not my shtick. I'm not here to put the fear of Odin in anyone. I'm here to put the confidence that we can do something about our situation in the world. Because if you just consume the mainstream media, I would imagine you'd be pretty anxious. And that's a mild way of putting it right now. And there's actually a lot of data that's coming out at the moment about anxiety in the world. I don't have any of it sitting in front of me, but I was reading a little bit on it this morning. The increase in anxiety, the increase in mental illness that's happening right now. And I would hazard a guess that it has something to do with the fact that we're being bombarded with bad news on the daily. So here's some more. No, I mean, I do load up with bad news. Most of it is focused on what's going wrong or could go wrong in the world. But the thing I want you to take away from this is that I'm not doing that to scare the shit out of you. What I'm doing it is so that we can figure out what way the world might be moving and how we can best prepare ourselves. Us working together as a team, as a group of preppers. That's what we're at. Reagan on YouTube says morning. So morning to you. Correct. It is morning where I am and possibly where you are. So, good morning to you if it is morning, or good day to you if it is not day, or good evening or night if it is at night when you are watching this or listening to it on the podcast version. Thank you for joining me. Let's jump off now. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about the bank crisis that's happened with the collapse of two major US banks in the past couple of days. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the fallout of that for Australia, but back to your regular programmed viewing for SitRep. So we're going to talk about some other stuff as well that's going on. Just a quick one sent through to me from a main source on Instagram. A really interesting article or piece called from the Morning Star, The Warning for Australia from the Collapse of the SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank. Kind of going through some of the fallout that could potentially happen. I'm not going to go through all of it, but some of our banks, some of our institutions some of our businesses are exposed to it. Just to name a couple here, hotel software provider SiteMinder and family tracking app Life360, which stood out to me because this is actually an app that I recommend to people all the time. It's a tracking app, but in security circles, or working as a security consultant, advisor, mercenary. We're not mercenaries. It's legal what we do, but we quite often use this free piece of technology to keep track of many people. It's used mainly, or was created for families, so you can track where your family is, but it works just as well if you're tracking a client or a group of people that are operating in an area. So it was interesting that I saw that Life360 obviously exposed to the SVB fallout. Good morning to you, Renee C. Welcome back. You're on most days, so I really appreciate that. Obviously I'm doing something right that you are willing to come back and listen. What else we got here? This was an interesting piece here. This is about the RBA, again sent to me from my main source. And I'm just going to read through their summation of this because it was quite a long report that you can pour through, pour through it if you want, but highlighting the gaps that we have in our banking system. I've been putting up posts about this, and I've always talked about this, that technically a reserve bank has infinite money, right? They don't need to make money, but they do make money. They've got the mechanism to make money. However, in 2021 and 22, the bank, being the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia, recorded an accounting loss of $36.7 billion So that's how much they lost in 21-22. 22-23, obviously we don't have that data yet. That hasn't come out, but we can see, oh, okay, that's a pretty big loss, and that's an anomaly. Maybe that's a bit different. There were different circumstances that were going on in that financial year. I just wanted to ask you, do you think things have got better financially since 21-22? Because I don't. So I'm looking at this going, I don't think the next report that we're going to get is going to be any better. I think they're going to post another loss. Why is that so disturbing? Like I said, they've got like theoretically infinite money. They're the creators of money. So the fact that they're posting a loss should be kind of concerning. They're not a business though, right? So who cares if they're making a loss? It's the foundation of our financial system. I'm not going to delve into that any further. It's just, again, I'm just pointing out these things to highlight the point that if you, for some reason you listen to me and you believe in the financial system that we have and its infallibility, I just like to highlight to people that it is very fallible and that it is due for a fall. And I'm not saying that fall's going to happen this week, although it could. It is within the realm of possibility that it could all fall in the next 24 hours, really, considering what's happened in the past week and what we've seen. It could all just collapse very, very quickly. But I think, realistically speaking, 5, 10, it could be 50 years down the pipeline. It could be a soft landing, but it's looking less and less likely that we're going to get a soft landing, that we're going to get a soft transition into some other banking system, some other financial system, I should say. But it definitely will be another banking system that will access it from, or it could be a hard landing. And at this point, I think, maybe looking back a month or two ago, no, probably further actually, probably 6 months ago, people were going, okay, we can see that there is going to be some sort of decline in the future. There's going to be some sort of, don't want to use the F word, fall, but there's going to be some sort of decline. There's going to be some sort of recession. There's going to be some sort of economic downturn. All right, let's get some fuzzy phrases around here so we don't have to use collapse or fall. But that's essentially what it is. People could see this. People in the economic world could see this. People who study this were going, yep, this is going to happen, but we can do it in a really hard way, as in crash, or we can do it in a soft way. We can just decline until we land in, and then we'll figure it out from there. Now what they're starting to say is it's either going to be a hard landing, i.e. crash, or it's going to be a harder landing, as in total collapse and explosion. So that's the choices. It's a shit sandwich. We have to eat it. We just got to figure out what angle we're going to take a bite from this. Where are we going? Straight from the front. We're going to take the corners first. We're going to nibble on it a little bit. I'm just going to stuff it in our faces. Let's figure that out. Renee C says MMT in fine form. MMT? What does that mean? Right. What else we got here? It's also there's a couple other articles on things like how Australian banks were sitting in their exposure to what was happening and the potential contagion coming from the fallout of SVB collapse. But on the whole, it's actually kind of good news. We're not super exposed to it here in Australia. There is, as I said, there's companies that are exposed to it. There are banks that have exposure to it. But on the whole, I think we'll probably, even if it was some sort of collapse happening, we may be able to ride it out a little bit. Modern monetary theory. Thank you very much, Renee. Yes, but never a depression, a greater recession than the Great Recession. Yeah, they don't want to use depression either. Don't want to use that word. Prelude to war, sticking with stuff around Australia-centric type information here. The Quad Fellowship, which is Australia, Japan, India, and the US. Those 4 countries got together and said, we're going to create a military fellowship, I guess, alliance between these countries focused on the rising threat of China. So that's pretty much is what holds the Quad together. They've just met. So I was making a joke that I haven't seen much out of Anthony Albanese, our beloved leader, the PM of Australia. And if you're in another country and you said, who? I don't blame you. I feel like if I said that to a lot of Australians, they'd also be like, who? Oh, yeah, Anthony Albanese, right. Yeah. I think I've seen something about him. They've got together, done a bit of handshaking, a bit of high-fiving, saying everything's all good. That's Elbow, Biden. Who else we got in there? What's his name? Damn it, I'm blanking on the Indian leader's name. Modi? Is it something like that? Somebody can help me out here. Anyway, and whoever the PM of Japan is, I totally don't know that one. So yeah, they've gotten together, done all the photo ops and stuff like that. Said, yep, we're doing it. We're pushing together. Why are they getting together now? Why are they doing this? This is a question I asked. What's actually going on here? I think there's rumblings in the waters, in the ether, not about China moving. All right, that's what people would obviously look at this. They go, China's moving. Yep, the Quad's getting together. That's obvious, and China's been doing that for a long time. So why would these guys get together now? I think the rumblings are actually about what can US do for us? I think there's doubt in the water now, and I've been saying this a lot, that what we're looking at is the kind of collapse of the kind of empire, the Pax Americana decline, the fall of the influence of the United States of America, which has been all-powerful as far as geopolitics has pretty much gone in the last 50 years. So we're seeing the decline of that. And there's a whole heap of effects that come from that. It's not just like, you're overthrowing the evil, bad people in charge, the 1%ers, all the rich white guys in the US. It's, that's not actually what you're going to get. What you're going to get is a fractious, dangerous world arising out of it. But a lot of countries are actually starting to lose their faith in US's ability to respond to something. Now, I've talked about these before. You've got Ukraine, which is pretty much a proxy war between US and Russia. You have what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, which is you've got Iran, Israel being probably the main two contenders in there, other factors in there as well, but that being a proxy war between Iran and US. You've also got North and South Korea, which is a proxy war between US and China. You've also got China to Taiwan, which is a proxy war between US and China. Can you spot the common denominator here? US is spread thin already. They've got ability to move, but do they have ability to move on all fronts at once? Well, some people say no. And that's what part of this is all about. These people getting together saying, hey, look, here's Biden. He's with us. He's backing us. We're all going to be fine. I actually went down and had breakfast, was having coffee today, and the talking heads of my local town. If you ever lived in a small rural town in Australia, you'd know that one of the things that defines them is the opinions that outweigh the person who is actually giving them. It is free-flowing and abundant. That is what we grow here in rural towns. Opinions. They're like assholes. Everyone has one, and they pretty much all stink. So opinions were getting thrown out, and somebody asked me, hey, Gads, what do you reckon? Recession or China invading? Which one do you think is more likely? Which one do you think would be worse? And I said, why are those two mutually exclusive for starters? Like, those two are probably interlinked, more interlinked than you would believe. But I said more likely recession. However, the conversation then went to what happens if China were to invade Australia, which again, I don't think Chinese boots on the ground in Australia is a highly likely thing to happen. I don't think it's a likely thing to happen in all reality. But what will we do? That was the discussion there. And I've just been reading articles like this, and I just kind of kept quiet on it. I actually don't want to exacerbate their fears or anything like that. These people are mainly more leaning into the mainstream, I would say. They don't want to hear that the US isn't just going to come and fish us out if something happened down here. The point that I'm trying to get across here is the mindset of reliance on micro scales, on macro scales. There's that kind of idea if anything really bad would happen, then a la World War II, the US, the might of the US would awaken. That giant would then stretch itself across the world and would quash all the evil doers around. I don't think we can rely on that anymore. And I think countries actually know that deep down. I think individuals actually know that really deep down. They might not want to admit it. We're on our own. That's the way we should start to frame our minds, even though we're not on our own, and we never will be on our own in reality on the whole. I think it behooves each and every country to actually start building its own forces up, its own defense capabilities. Australia is doing that. So here was an interesting little thing that got put out today. The top 40 countries who import arms, all sorts of arms, not arms like these ones, but arms like these ones, and cannons and warships and fighter jets, blah, blah, blah. Australia, very surprisingly to me, was 4th on that list. We made the top 10, we made the top 5. We're 4th biggest importer of arms on the face of the earth. Saudi Arabia, number 1, had 9-point-something% of the share of all countries that import. They had 9% of it. Australia has over 4%. That's a huge chunk. Pretty much everything under 5 or 6 was under 1%. So we are importing. No massive guesses if you. No massive prizes, I should say, if you guessed where we import most of our arms from. It might be the person who is standing next to Elbow in the photo. The beloved leader of the free world, Joseph Biden. I mean, it's probably not him selling it. I'm sure he's profiting off it, though. All right, what else is happening around the world? Let's bounce around now. I've got a little bit of... Let's stick with war stuff right now because this is in the same vein. British PM has just come out and announced a massive defense spending increase. So Rishi Sunak, I should say, is going to increase the military spending by around £5 billion. That's a lot of pounds. It's $6 billion US dollars. That's like, I don't know, 9-10 billion Aussie. The funds will partially be used to replenish Britain's ammunition stocks depleted from supplying Ukraine in its conflict with Russia and modernize the UK's nuclear enterprise. That's in quotes, the UK's nuclear enterprise. There's a couple of stories that are coming out around this same vein. So mark that one in your head as another data point. Which way are we heading as a world right now? We are very clearly heading towards major conflict, potentially, but countries are looking at the nuclear option. We have had a history in the last couple of decades of decreasing the amount of nuclear weapons that we have in the world. That is turning around very quickly. We are seeing increases in defense spending. We are seeing increases in the interest in the actual ability to create nuclear weapons, to create new nuclear weapons. And so this is a bit of a flag that jumped up that said, hey, UK's doing it now too. UK obviously has nuclear weapons, by the way, in case you didn't know. They've got nuclear weapons. But it looks like they may want more. Very, as I said, the quote here is UK's nuclear enterprise. Personally, I think they might be wanting to invest in some nuclear power right about now. That might help their country out a bit more, but it's neither here nor there. Um, who else wants nukes? South Korea. The mayor of Seoul calls for South Korea to develop nuclear weapons. South Korea should develop and build nuclear weapons as a means to defend itself from the growing nuclear threat from North Korea. So, this coming off the news that North Korea just fired off a missile from a submarine 24 hours ago. But we're looking at what North Korea has been doing, and historically, the last few years, you kind of look at North Korea and you go like, oh yeah, they got nukes, I guess. They got this like ancient technology that they're trying to fire them with. They got these old school missiles. Look at the way they're doing things. Ha ha ha. Look at them. They're a joke. And then obviously in the last 12 months, people are starting to say, oh, that's not a joke anymore. This is actually serious. They have gone leaps and bounds. Have they done it by themselves? I personally don't think so. I think they've had maybe a little bit of help from their mates, their red mates just across the border, and maybe their ex-red mates up north, further north. But regardless of where they're getting it from, they have obviously increased their ability to deliver nuclear payloads into other countries. And not that you need a super far-reaching rockets. You don't really need ICBMs to get to South Korea or to Seoul, for that matter, which is very close to the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea. But they do have those abilities. So now there are calls for South Korea to start developing nuclear weapons or to have nuclear weapons. This is also on the back of information that rumors that the US was going to start putting in nuclear weapons or having nuclear weapons stationed in and around South Korea. So obviously, increase in tension here, increase in the likelihood that something could go seriously wrong. This is the wrong direction that we want to go if we're thinking about, hey, I want a peaceful world. I want to live in a world that's not irradiated. I want to live in a world where nuclear war is not necessarily an option. That this is potentially going the opposite way. However, there is a theory that it is going the right way, being that more people with more nukes actually, some people actually say that there's less likely to use nukes the more nukes that are out there. I don't know about that personally, but that's a thought. Back over into the Ukraine area, looking over the Black Sea. This is a big one that's just dropped in the past couple of hours. A USAF, that's the United States Air Force Reaper drone, an MQ-9 Reaper drones. It's a drone that they had flying out over the Black Sea. They said for conducting routine operations in international airspace, was totally legal, was totally meant to be there. Was probably conducting reconnaissance or something, or maybe was on standby to do a hit. But no, it definitely was not doing that according to the US. Of course, it wasn't. Well, it's been knocked out of the sky. Really oddly as well, knocked out of the sky. It wasn't shot out of the sky, but apparently a Russian aircraft, potentially, there's mixed reporting on this, but potentially an Su-27 fighter knocked it out of the air by physically colliding with it. So physically colliding with the propellers of it. There's also reports that it dumped fuel on it and was flying erratically in front of it to try and get it to change course. So this is all coming from the US side. They said, yep, what was happening was we had it flying out there over the Black Sea legally, wasn't doing anything illegal, international waters, we're fine to do that. And then an SU rocked up, the Ruskies rocked up and they started flying around. They did a burn over the top and dumped fuel on the actual drone, then started buzzing the tower and flying in front of it erratically, and then clipped the propeller of said aircraft, tanking it down. And apparently the Su-27 then just flew off. It was fine. What does Russia have to say about this? Yet, comrade, was not us. Do not know what you're talking about. They have basically denied it thus far. I haven't seen anything to the contrary yet, but I imagine at some stage they're going to have to come out with something better than just, no, it wasn't us. Like I said at the start of this, proxy war that's going on here between Ukraine and Russia, this sort of action where we're seeing US assets and Russian assets come into direct conflict is a potential flashpoint. I don't think this one will flash the way that some people are thinking it might. It could, but I think if the Russians continue to just deny it, then there's nothing really, like, then it's kind of the ball's in US's court to push this. But yeah, if the Russians deny it, which I think they will continue to do, then I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. All right, what else is happening in the world? Let's talk about some riots and demonstrations that are going on. There's quite a few of them. I'm just going to focus on two of them right now. Georgia is still up in arms. We've just seen demonstrations overnight where they burnt an EU flag in front of the Georgian Parliament building. So those protests are still going on. There's still government forces or crackdown measures that are happening against them that are relatively extreme, I would say. Then it hasn't quelled these demonstrations at all, though. So there's also going to be some sort of investigation, apparently, into the burning of the EU flag. Interesting stuff that's going on there. Obviously, this is something that Russia has most probably got their fingers in, maybe even instigating. But you know, this is yet another little flashpoint, another data point that we should be looking at. Don't need to worry about it. Definitely not here in Australia. Just go, okay, log that. That's something else interesting that's happening. Start to look at the pieces of the puzzle coming together. French strikers escalate. This was an interesting one. Not because they're striking. I have said this all the time. Like, I think protesting and rioting is the Parisian national pastime. It's like their national sport. There's soccer and then there's rioting just below it, sometimes on the same day. But the interesting point here for me was what they did. They cut off power to ATMs and payment terminals. They essentially severed the power so that people could not use these electronic forms of payment, which is very, very interesting to me because I'm always talking about this sort of stuff. It's like, hey, what if power goes out? Most people in Australia now prefer to use electronic forms of payment rather than cash payment. And especially over the last couple of days where we've looked at this banking collapse and I've talked about, hey, maybe get some cash out. Well, this would be another reason. I'm not saying get some cash out because SVB went under. I'm saying get some cash out because it's a smart idea to have some cash on hand. And it could be for anything. I.e., here's another example. A protest that then cut off people's ability to use ATMs. So you couldn't get cash out. So that one jumped up at me, again, sent through to me by my main source. And I thought that was really, really interesting when that one came up. I was like, that's a new little tactic that they've chucked in there. Norman Lacey says, before you can blame Russia, you have to ask yourself how many other nations in the area use Russian fighters, as in the Su-27s, including the Ukraine. I don't think Ukraine does use Su-27s. I'd have to check that. I was under the impression that they do not use them, but I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong from time to time. Yeah, but that's another thing to ask is, who did actually bring this down? When I was talking, as I said, when I was actually talking about that story, that this is coming from the US, that the US Air Force has released this information, said a Russian Su-27 was flying in front of us. When the Russians have been asked about it, they said, no, it wasn't us. All right, here's a little bit of interesting information that I am really curious to find out what actually comes of this, because this isn't the first time this particular piece of information or something similar to it has come out before. Xi Jinping is heading over to shake hands with Putin and do some high-fiving with Putin. And they're going to do whatever they're going to do. Obviously, everyone is thinking about, this is it. This is the big alliance. This is the axis of evil. I'm thinking more, these two are probably the biggest trading partners to each other, maybe minus India. They've been swapping resources and money wholesale and gold recently. So it's probably just more of that going on. But, could be something else. However, Xi Jinping has also put in plans to speak with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, which is quite interesting. Now, if you cast your mind back maybe 3 months ago, there were talks where Xi Jinping was saying, hey, we need to broker peace in this area, and even offered in a very roundabout way to broker some sort of deal between these two nations, Ukraine and Russia. And the whole thing was just sort of like, yeah, whatever. So it's interesting now that he's going over and he's talking to both of these leaders. I'm wondering what's going to come of here. And I'm going to be very interested what is actually said between Zelensky and Xi Jinping. Would love to be a fly on the wall of that little, what's going to be a Zoom conference, apparently, that he's not actually going into Ukraine, but they're going to do it electronically through the interwebs. So yeah, interesting stuff going on there, and that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. All right, let's jump over to the US now and have a look what's going on there. This one I thought was super interesting. Some Hollywood people, which, have this tendency, if we went back like 1,000 years and you said this person is an actor, you'd be like, oh, court jester, hey, that's cool. Where do they sit in society? Like, kind of span, I guess. But nowadays you go, oh, this person's an actor, a famous Hollywood actor. It's almost akin to like godlike, like idol worship. Oh my God. Wow. This person who was in a film lives in Hollywood. So important. The only real problem of that, I think, is that they then believe that. And they feel they have a lot of say over certain things. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but a group of actors and other Hollywood political donors has reportedly argued that President Joe Biden needs to jettison Kamala Harris as his vice president, picking a new running mate when he runs for re-election in 2024. So what's going on here? As far as I can see, this is the Democrat type crowd within Hollywood is looking at this and going like, okay, we want Uncle Joe to win this next one because there's a real chance that he's going to be up against Trump, and we definitely wouldn't want Trump in. God, that'd be the end of the world, right? God, we could go to war with like Russia or China. God, the financial system could crash or something if we had Trump in, but not like Biden. Good old Joe Biden's sorting it all out. Imagine what inflation would do if we had Trump in. Anyway, so they've come in and said, yeah, you need to get rid of Kamala Harris, which I think is really interesting. I don't disagree with it. I haven't seen anything that really shows me that she has what it takes. And the issue is, what the problem is they're looking at what voters within the US are going to be thinking. This dude's old. This dude is senile. People know that. So they're going, okay, well, if he doesn't make it the full 4 years, we'll put him in, but if he doesn't make it the full 4 years, who else we got? And they're looking at Harris and they're going, no. So they're saying, boot that one, get someone else in, which will be an interesting shakeup, I think, at the very least. But this is we're starting to look forward at this now because, it's coming up next year. We're looking at these elections in the US, obviously pretty fractious time that's going on in the world. And if we look, how does the US sit? Again, I'm trying to highlight these data points that show us that Pax Americana might not be the power that it once has been. What else is happening in the US? Child and teen mortality in the US experiences the largest increase in decades. Child and adolescent mortality rates in the United States rose by 20% between 2019 and 2021, the largest increase in at least 50 years. This was according to an editorial published in the American Medical Association Journal, or the Journal of American Medical Association, the JAMA. I did pull out this piece of information, not this piece of information, but a similar piece of information that showed there has been a decline in how long people are living for within US. This is US data that was coming out. So we saw that people were living into their 80s, and then it's dropped off this last couple of years. Surprise, surprise. Some people will look at that and go, well, of course, we just went through a pandemic. People who have at least a couple of brain cells in their head and might know their way around statistics in a rough way and how to read them and interpret them, might know their way roughly around a peer-reviewed medical journal article, could probably start to read a few of these things, do a bit of research and go, I don't think it was COVID per se. I think it might have been a whole heap of things around COVID that we did. Maybe. That's why we're decreasing in age. We're seeing the drop off. But one of the key pieces of information there was age brackets. So if you looked at age brackets and COVID deaths, I should stop saying that word because I'll just get banned from everywhere. But anyway, if you looked at age brackets, you could clearly see that it is massively different between younger people, middle-aged people, and older people. The people that were dying of the big C were predominantly older people. So, children and teens, why are they dying? Nothing was really solidly put forward for that. All we're seeing is that it is happening. Again, this is another one of those data points where I'm always looking for kind of like, I guess, the collapse of civilization as we know it, but the decline in the quality of life that we have. And this is one of the reasons why I say things like, hey, I don't think like it's the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse, or we're going to go Mad Max or anything. I just think that we're going to go into a time that is harder than what we've experienced for the last 50 years, where we've experienced a utter abundance for the last 50 years. And what we're going to go into is a different sort of time, where we're going to have to deal with a lot of the consequences of us borrowing against the future. Well, that future is coming. And some of those things are indicators like this statistical data that says, hey, more people are going to die. That's obviously something that we don't want. Oh, I'll take that back. That's obviously something that I don't want. I don't want more people to die. You can want whatever you want, but yeah, I don't want undue deaths. And I especially don't want younger people having higher mortality rates. This is the kind of thing that terrifies me a little bit when I'm looking at things like the data on the big C deaths, and I'm looking at it and it's like over 65s, then increasing over 75s, and then up 85, 95. I'm like, oh, okay, that, bad, I get it, but also lived a fair bit of life there. So we can weigh that up, and you can have your own morals on that. When I look at it and it's somebody under the age of 21, now I'm like, no, I don't like this at all. Speaking of the age of under 21, interesting bit of information that came out of Russia overnight. They are looking at changing their conscription age. So the age that they can drag people into the military has previously been 18 to 27, which I have talked about this in the past. I think that if you're going to get people into the military, I think that's a good age bracket to pull from, but not necessarily 18. I'm not really down with that. Well, they're going to shift it 21 to 30, which I think is much better. You shouldn't really be dragging people into the military anyway, but if you're going to have to do that or force people into it, then 21 and up, I think, is a good age to do for a number of reasons. I actually don't really believe that males are fully there until we're 21 at least. So good idea. 18, okay, yeah, if you want to do military service from 17, 18, that's fine. I just don't think you should be able to do warlike service. You shouldn't be getting sent in to fight. So yeah. All right, catch up on a few comments here. Peter Rouse, morning to you, says it's collapsing. glad you're kind of seeing what I'm seeing. Diet is a big factor to their poor health for children, or teens and children, and I agree. Movement also is a big factor. And mental issues, I believe, also is a big factor. So being outside more, being closer to nature, being able to eat more or less processed food, giving more opportunity to move around and just be a kid. I think that's where we need to really aim for these sorts of things. Peter Rouse also says in Switzerland it's 18 and it's mandatory, as with a number of countries around the world, which is fine. But again, like I'm not necessarily against some form of civil service, I guess might be the best way to put it. Whether you go into the military, whether you maybe some sort of policing or law enforcement, or some Greenpeace picking up litter, whatever it looks like in whatever country for whatever people. I'm not totally against it. I actually think like there are very good pros to that sort of system. However, sending 18-year-olds off to fight wars, I think, not really down with that personally. Let them serve, just don't send them off to die, or maybe not to fight. Could live. Mental and diet are closely related, says Peter Rouse. I think you are correct there. Singapore is also 18, but it's a joke. Yeah, so no good news there. Let's look after our kids, hey? Let's look after our kids. Don't mind the average age coming down from 82 to 79 or whatever it came down to. I do mind an increase in adolescent and child mortality. Bit of financial news now, because y'all haven't had enough in the last 2 days. Been watching the crypto markets. I've been watching all markets, but crypto market, I was watching it just go to the moon overnight. That's really odd. What's happening here? It went up and up and up, and then it came down. So a little bit of looking around, trying to figure out, trying to connect the dots here, because the thing about crypto is it moves fast. It moves almost like faster than a lot of other stock markets, and it doesn't have closing times. So crypto is always going, and it's hard to catch the news. So you'll see trends in the market start to happen, and you'll search for news. You might not get it for 12 hours. You might not get it for 24 hours. But here's one thing that I saw that might have something to do with this. I mean, there's a number of other things that are going on right now around crypto, but I didn't see anything that should have increased it through the roof, and I didn't see anything that should have dropped it at an equal rate, except for this one. Binance, which is one of the largest global companies operating in and around crypto space, as in it's an exchange of crypto, just halted deposits for withdrawal, or deposits and withdrawals, using UK sterling, so pound sterling. So all UK customers now are just like, nope, what's that? You've got 22 Bitcoin. Cool. Do you know what that's worth on our crypto exchange in pounds? Well, nothing, because you can't get any. So you've got 24 Bitcoin. Congratulations. Obviously, there's ways around that. You can trade it off to potentially to another platform and try and get it through there. But pretty big deal, because Binance has also done that previously with the dollar. So this is a bit of a blow to the market. And I think this is the thing that's spooking people, that we're starting to look at it. Again, another thing that is going to freak people out about crypto. And this is why I am really uncertain about crypto right now, that it is sitting on a knife edge. And I believe, and again, this is my slight tinfoil hat. It's only half tinfoil hat, because you can see this happening and it has been stated. But if you look at what's actually happening, imagine trying to take a guy seriously when he's talking to you like this. If you can see what's happening, it looks planned. It looks like governments are attempting to take down crypto right now, and they're attempting to do it not by taking it down. They've tried the regulatory way. They've tried to block it. They've tried to do all these things, and still crypto has kind of found a way, like weeds in cracks in the pavement, right? It just keeps finding this way. What they've done now is gone, let's just destroy faith in the system. So chucking in things like this where people go like, oh shit, I could just lose my money. Oh shit, that bank that just went under, they were mainly in crypto. That means I can't get my money. So crypto is actually worth nothing. Wait, and people are suddenly realizing that crypto isn't anything. It's nothing. It's nothing. The thing is though, it's a better nothing than money. Because the government wants you to use a system that has nothing linked to it, but they want you to use their system that has nothing linked to it. So that's what they're trying to do, I think. That's what they're trying to expose, and it's freaking people out, and they're dumping out of the crypto game. Yeah, so that's a bit of a disturbing one that's been happening in that space. Kieran says bank run. Could definitely be. Peter Rouse says most crypto are scams. Yep. And a lot of the platforms that trade them as well. Got to be wary of that. All right, let's finish off with some weather news because I like to talk about the weather. Hot weather we're having today, isn't it? No, floods in California. Emergency crews rush to repair a levee break in a storm-swollen river on California's central coast as flood water swamped local communities. So they're getting hit again in California. Peru. Floods in Peru eat away shorelines, destroying homes. This is in the capital, somewhere around the capital. It doesn't actually give me an exact place. From a cyclone Yakul. And just because we haven't had enough cyclones yet, 66 dead in Malawi as Cyclone Freddy smashes through southern Africa. Malawi and Mozambique suffered the devastating effects of Cyclone Freddy, one of the strongest tropical cyclones ever recorded in the southern hemisphere. At least 66 people have been reported dead so far. What do I report on cyclones hitting Africa? I'm an Australian. What does it matter, right? Well, as I always say, weather events are one of the things that I always prep for. Everyone's always concerned, the bank collapse, the financial collapse, the zombie apocalypse, the war, the world war, nuclear war, blah, blah, blah. All those things, yep, they're worthwhile right now, keeping a little bit of a mind on. But you know what's definitely going to happen? A storm, a bushfire. Like in the next 5 years where I live, there will be storms, multiple of. There will be flooding events, multiple of. There will be at least one bushfire, if not multiple bushfires of a larger scale, and many, many smaller fires. There will be high winds. There will be cyclone events, not where I live, but that will hit Australia. All these things are going to happen. Earthquakes, there'll be volcanoes, all this sort of stuff, all this earth-based geological weather type events are going to happen. So this is something that I prepare for in multiple ways. In fact, I prepare my own home that I can fortify and fix my own home if I can. I prepare grab bags. So if I'm bumped out of my home, very military term, sorry. If I'm forced to leave my home for whatever reason, then I have stuff with me that I can take easily. And also go to the next level. I've just been upgrading actually my little emergency pack. So some of you have been following me for a while will recall that when an emergency happens in and around somewhere where I can get to in Australia, and I have the resources and the time, I often go and respond to that. So the big bushfires obviously helped fight them. The flooding that happened up in northeastern New South Wales and the Northern Rivers went up and helped out there for a little bit. So that's another thing that I prep for. I prep gear for that. Make sure that I've got the appropriate safety equipment, that I've got things that I could help people out, the right medical kits, the right types of gear. So I've just actually purchased a new pack that I've been fitting out, and it's sexy high-vis orange. Ooh. Because not everything has to be tactical, right? Not everything has to be camo or OD green or whatever. Some stuff I actually want to be seen in. I want to be identified in because it's helpful. It's a safety mechanism. So yeah, that's something I think about and try and prep for as well. So cast a little chunk of your mind over the weather events that we're seeing at the moment and what you can do to better prepare yourself for weather, because weather is something that will happen. Peter Rouse says floods in California mostly due to poor infrastructure. I have no idea about that because I haven't been there. I mean, I've been to California. I haven't been to the areas that are being flooded at the moment, so I don't know what the infrastructure is like. Tonga eruption, a big factor with these weather patterns. I mean, there's some interesting alternative information about weather patterns. We can easily look at this and just go, put the same old plastered coverall story on it and say climate change. It's like, yeah, all right, no shit. The climate is changing. We get that. The climate always changes, always has, and always will change. The focus, like when you see climate change, though, it's synonymous with anthropomorphic, or not anthropomorphic. That's not the right word for it. Anthrocentric, progenited, human created climate change. That we're the fault of it. That we've caused it. But there are other factors. Whether you believe that or don't believe that, I actually don't care. But there are other factors, and you start to look into that. Things like eruptions. And we have seen many ice ages happen in the past from volcanic eruptions. We have seen wholesale death of human beings, so die-offs of human beings from volcanic eruptions. And if you want to take this to the next level, and I've had some people throw some interesting and or nasty comments at me for this. Solar weather. Does the sun have an effect on our weather? I think it does. All right. That's what I have been kind of going down as a rabbit hole in the last few months and reading more and more on this, on the evidence of it. I think that these effects that we feel from the sun, I mean, obviously the sun has an effect on weather, right? How close it is to the earth depends on what season you're in, where the tilt of the earth is. So that shortens the difference between it. But there's more to it that's actually going on there. There's a whole lot more to it. And that's one of the reasons why pretty much every morning I'm watching a channel called Space Weather News or Suspicious Observers on YouTube. And I highly recommend checking these guys out because they do a bang up job every single morning of putting out a little report of what the sun has done overnight. Overnight Australia times. They're in the US, so they're watching it kind of live or in the morning or something. Anyway, it's great stuff. Check it out, and you'll eventually start to go down a rabbit hole with these guys, which will show you the actual peer-reviewed journal articles of evidence, of empirical evidence of solar events and how they affect the Earth, especially our climate. That Insta-chick says solar flares are legit. Thank you for reminding me of this, actually. I mean, yes, solar flares are legit. It's one of the things that I prep for, a coronal mass ejection, an EMP event that can come from our sun at any stage, has happened in the past, 200 years ago. Yeah, it was about 150 years ago. Could happen again. The only difference between back then and now is it messed up all the electrical infrastructure we had back then, which was next to nothing. Our infrastructure now is something that utterly supports our civilization. So a large scale, what was called a Carrington event. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google Carrington event. A large scale Carrington type event happening nowadays would stop our civilization. That would be Mad Max. You know how I'm always saying, like, oh, it's not going to go Mad Max. That would actually send us Mad Max. So check that out. Isn't Bill Gates blocking the sun for supposed global warming? Yeah, I've talked about this in the past, that there are a number of companies actually and some organizations that are fully hell-bent on pumping different types of blocking what would you call it, aerosols into our atmosphere in order to decrease the amount of sun that hits Earth, which is the ultimate insanity to me. But one American company recently, which was operating down in Mexico, got caught doing it. They were running the experiment. They were giving it a crack and just pumping it out, and they got caught. And Mexico was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Not my turf, bro. Shut that down." Peter Rouse says, "Waterproof your gear." Excellent idea. CME was hot discussion on Timcast yesterday. Timcast, what's that guy's name? Tim who? Tim someone or other. I can't remember the dude's name. Anyway, you can tell me. That and the new bird flu. That's always a bad one. Yes, as I was saying, you reminded me that Insta-chick, Lauren, that in the past 24 hours, there was a Carrington-sized coronal mass ejection coming from the sun. It just happened to come off the exact opposite side, so the non-Earth facing side. That was, sorry, I think that was 48 hours ago it came off, and then we just got the data from it in the past 24 hours, and people were like, whoa, that was huge. If that had been facing us when it happened, that quite potentially could have been it. You wouldn't be listening to me today. You'd be staring at a blank little slate that didn't turn on, and you'd be like, huh, where's Ragnarok Survival? I don't know what's going on today. Gads, are you there? Hello? You'd be in the dark as well. Nothing would be happening. Imagine that. All the grid's gone. Pretty terrifying thought. That's what I'm going to leave you on today. Tim Paul, thank you. Thank you, Peter Rouse. That's what I'm going to leave you on today. That cheery little thought that at any stage it could all be taken away from us. So it behooves us all to set the systems up where we can rely more on ourselves, that we have the things that we need organically or homogeneously within our space, that we can create what we need, or we can store at least what we need to get us through hard times. Because if a CME, a large CME hit coronal mass ejection, EMP, hit Earth and knocked out the grids, all of them, that's not 72 hours, gang. That's not like, oh, I just need to hang out for 72 hours and then the government would come. That's no more governments, no more anything. Some people, you anarchists, would get your little wet fantasy there and be like, oh, no more governments, just a pure utopian world where we all work together and everything's fine. I would disagree with that, having seen places, states, cities that have collapsed before. I think human nature might be a little bit different to what you're fantasizing about, or where it goes, at least in that short term. But yeah, think about that. Think about securing your own power if you can. Think about securing your own food, your own water, as always. Get in the garden if you can. Keep working out your physical being so that you're able to do things, and keep your mind and eyeballs sharp and focused on the world around you. But that's it for today, gang. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all smiling. As always, the world has not collapsed yet. We still have plenty of time. Plenty of time to implement the things. Those people who are running around going, it's too late, it's too late. Those people have probably been saying that for 25 years now. It's too late, it's too late. Just start somewhere. All right, stay safe, keep your eyes open, and until next time, Semper Paratus.